worst behavior. No, they used to never want to hear us.
Hello, 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 humans of the world. Welcome to episode 4. I'm so excited. I have another VIP guest, my friend Stacy. I'm so excited to have her. We have these conversations, these relations and crazy conversations all the time. So I cannot wait for you guys to tune in on the way we speak. Stacy, just to give you a little briefing, Stacy and I met through a mutual friend who we're not really mutually friends with anymore. Well, I'm not mutually friends with him anymore. She may still be. But I think that it was so ironic because we both moved to California around the same time. And I knew no one there but this mutual friend, and he introduced us, and then now we moved him out of the way and became really cool friends. It was the best and greatest gift I got with my arrival to California. And so now we're both back in New York because life hates our guts and doesn't want us to have tans and be in the sun. So here we are. And so, I think she's super smart. I'm really excited for her to give you guys her perspective. So, the premise of this topic is childhood experiences and how they shape our relationships and our beliefs about ourselves. And this episode title is called The Worst Behavior, right? With the song. You guys copy that, right? Okay, cool. So, Stacy, tell them a little bit about you. So she just graduated from Columbia University, guys, with a master's degree. Tell them more about this degree.
Sure. Thank you for having me.
Yay!
So I just graduated from Columbia in May with a master's in organizational psychology and change leadership.
Oof.
So that was really exciting.
That's a mouthful.
Yeah, it is, but it's awesome. We can just call it XMA.
XMA? Oh, they have an abbreviation.
Yeah.
Of course, it's 2018. Everything has an abbreviation. Well, I think that the reason why I wanted to have this conversation with you on the mic because this degree is really fresh. You just learned all these amazing things on our psyche. So I want us, to dig in a little bit into it and really tap into what it means to have learned behaviors and identify what we believe about ourselves. So, what are some learned behaviors that you see in your life that you feel like you got from an experience and not from what you are ordained to be or naturally to be?
Yeah. So we know, and I'm going to use some XMA knowledge for a second. We know that our behavior is a function of our personality, but it's also a function of our environments. And so if you think about that, it's like, all right, what's happened in my environment? What did I learn that maybe I didn't want to learn or didn't need to learn? Now I need to unlearn. And so, for example, one of the biggest things for me is how I value myself or how I have valued myself as a person, which I wasn't aware of until last year, actually.
So you didn't know that you were not valuing yourself?
I didn't know that I was basing my self-worth off of my achievements, my accomplishments, and the way that other people saw me.
Like what 99% of humans are doing right now on Earth.
Maybe not 99%, but a lot.
But a lot of people.
Yes.
So, honestly, I've thought about this a lot, and I think that a lot of why this is happening is because of this constant push, right? Like from the moment you're born, it's like hurry up and walk. And then once you walk, it's like, oh, go to school and learn your ABCs. And then, okay, now go to high school. And okay, now figure out what you want to do for the rest of your life and pay a lot of money to get a degree. And so it's always this, I think it's ingrained not just in our psyche from our environment, but in society. Like it's deep rooted stuff that we need to constantly be achieving something, accomplishing something, reaching another goal to be good people. Right. So how much of that do you think is learned from environments versus like our society, and how does that affect ourselves?
Yeah, it's hard to put a percentage on it, but I think a lot, like some people have personality traits that push them in that direction naturally. But a lot of the times we have parents or teachers and the way that our school system is set up is basically you get grades and you get like that's how you're valued. You take a test. Some of us have parents who were like, where's the other 1% if you came home with a 99% instead of saying you did a really great job, or hey, like, how come you missed that? Like, what do we need to work on for next time? So teaching us how to perform instead of teaching us how to learn from purely academic perspective. And so that translates into adults who don't know how to fail properly, don't know how to be resilient and pick yourself up, and how to make mistakes and make decisions, and how to embrace like different parts of you, and how to really do things where you're not going to be good at. So for example, for a long time, I would say that I can't draw at all, and therefore I wouldn't draw.
So now, you didn't know whether you could draw or not because you never tried.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I couldn't do it well. Like I wasn't first in art class like I was in everything else. So I automatically told myself I wasn't creative, I can't do this, and I'm not going to be good at it, so I'm not even going to bother trying. When it could have been something that
that you could have practiced and gotten better at.
Or if I didn't, it could have just been something relaxing, which is fine. Yeah.
And hobbies are not something that we're taught to really focus on.
Exactly.
Just get good at doing something that's going to make you a lot of money.
Exactly.
Right? We have to make money. And that is very, very clear from a really early on age, I think, at least. So what are some of your childhood experiences in which you recognize negatively impacted you now as an adult? What would be one of those things aside from constantly achieving?
I think if we take it a little bit deeper from a relationship perspective, I didn't grow up with a lot of positive or healthy marital relationships around me, or long-term relationships. So I don't really know what that looked like. And so I think for a long time, so before I met my now husband, I was in relationships that I had no business being in, because I didn't know how to navigate those properly. I didn't realize that I was letting somebody else determine my self-worth. I was letting somebody else sort of control my destiny, quote unquote. Because what I saw around me were adults who didn't have functional relationships. Their relationships were dysfunctional, but they stayed because that's what they thought that they should do. That was their quote unquote lot in life. So I thought, this is what you do. You stick it out no matter how bad it gets, because as long as he doesn't hit you, it's fine.
I relate to you with this a lot, and something I was gonna take this a different direction, but now I was just triggered to redirect it. So I did take on I saw a lot of negative relationships in my environment as well, and there were times, or there was a time, I don't know at what point it happened, but there was a time that I decided, well, I'm gonna just do opposite from what I'm seeing. So, for instance, my mom is a great cook, or was a great cook. Cooked a lot, always cooked for the family. While my father was in the picture, she would cook dinner every night and would serve it to him. Well, she wouldn't always serve it to him, but she would serve it to him. And so in my mind, I programmed to think, okay, well, I don't want to be that type of wife, so I'm just not going to cook, right? And I think that I have taught myself to believe that I don't like cooking.
Right.
And so I have this cooking phobia. And I'm not bad at it. When I cook, and usually is when I'm really craving something that I know that I could only make and I really want to do it. That's the only time I will push myself to cook. But I have taught myself no, actually I don't want to be the woman who comes home and cooks and just cleans and takes care of the kids. So I am going to focus on being an independent, hardworking woman that makes money, and I'm not going to cook. But then now I'm spending $300 a month on food because I refuse to cook, and it's heavy. I feel it on top of me. I get up and I'm hungry, and I look at the stove and I'm no, I'm just not. Even on Saturday, actually, I took out all this stuff to make pancakes. Super simple. I've been making pancakes since I was 8. So I took all the ingredients out, and then this overwhelming feeling came over me. I'm you know what? No, not doing it. Right. I'm not cooking any pancakes. Not cooking, period. And so, yes, that's a learned behavior, but it was opposite, right? Because it wasn't what I was seeing. I had a phobia I was seeing that
Right.
I now ingrained the complete opposite, which
Right.
is so messed up. I could probably be really amazing chef. I love the cooking channel.
Probably could. I mean, and if you take that a step further, you're so against cooking for somebody else and a
Oof.
family that you're not cooking for
For
yourself.
myself. So I'm suffering in this process. This is only supposed to be like against for men, and now I don't cook for me. I don't cook for anybody.
Right.
Like I almost just become allergic to the idea of having to go through that process.
Right.
Gosh, wow, that literally just came to me, and I didn't even have plans to even talk about that. So there you go. I guess I need to heal that and start cooking. So, what are some behaviors you are learning to unlearn?
Ooh, that's a heavy
But it's
one.
like a big one right now that you're like, you know what, this I need to unlearn, and I'm gonna put it into practice consistently.
It's interesting, and it's also not what I came prepared to talk about.
Look at us popping up with stuff.
But one of the things that I am learning to unlearn is the forced independence, actually. And so there are times when I need to ask for help. And throughout my adult life, I rarely do that. And then and so we have moments where, okay, I desperately need help with something. And I'm not talking about moving a box or like doing something. I can hire people for that if my husband's not around. And I can't do it myself. But I'm talking about, hey, I really need an introduction to so-and-so because I am getting nowhere with a job search. Or I emotionally need help. I need support. And I do not know how to ask for that. And so I'm learning to unlearn, or I'm trying to unlearn that behavior of bottling up all of my emotions and not letting other people support me. Because in the past I didn't know how to express them. So one of the things that I learned, like so many people learned during their childhood, and if you're listening to this and you're from my childhood, don't take offense, was that it's not okay to express your emotions unless it's happiness. Everything else, was like you bottle it up and you keep moving. And so I said a lot of things there, and it could take us hours to unpack that. But unlearning that is actually proving to be really, really hard.
Yeah, they all of them are, because I feel like they're ingrained in our psyche. Like it's so much a part of our making.
Yeah.
But you're already a step ahead because you've noticed that it was something that you learned, and it's something that you need to unlearn. And I think that that's even harder, right? Because you have to admit that to yourself, and then admit it right now out loud to others, so that you can begin the process of like deprogramming, for lack of better words.
But it took a really difficult time in my life to, it took a actually really big, sad event for me to learn that, hey, maybe you need to lean on other people sometimes, including your husband. So imagine being my husband.
Ugh.
Hey, Jim.
I mean, yeah. I think that's what this life journey, I believe it's about. It's like, if you don't figure this out, then I'm gonna take you through these different moments and experiences so that you can uncover these things about you. Like this whole journey is a self-discovery. Like this is what it's all about, right?
It can be if you're open to that. Because there are some of us who have been or are just going through life, just going through the motions and just letting life happen instead of actually waking up and taking a step back and saying, okay, this is a journey. I'm going to either roll with it intentionally, or I'm going to take a step back and try to figure out how I want to move forward.
Right. And that's a process within itself to even like get to the space to do that. So I commend you for doing that. The one I'm unlearning right now is speaking up for myself, kind of in line with you, but specifically for me, I just was always taught to be complacent and not to ruffle the feathers. And I've always been really outspoken, and that was muted really early on in my life. It was like, no, Melissa, like, why you always have to be the one to say something, and you're making people upset, and you're, just let's let people be and let people go. Don't say what you feel. Like, just stop feeling and stop saying it. And I think that led me into many years of doing things that I didn't want to do. and it led me to be very unhappy. I even thinking back, I was having a conversation with another friend, and he's like, I feel like you did like so many things just because everybody else was doing it, and I was like, yeah, and that led me to a lot of my depressions. Mm-hmm. The reason why I was depressed so often in high school, and sometimes in college, was because I was doing something that was outside of my comfort. Not comfort, outside of my spirit to do. Like, it was in my spirit not to be at whatever party, or not to be drinking that way, or not to go to the movies with them, or whatever. Like, whatever it was, I just always pushed I remember just giving myself pep talks, like, well, Melissa, you're never gonna have friends if you don't like want to go out. Like, you shouldn't want to be in your house just watching TV. Like, that's not what teenagers do, so go out. And I just pushed myself so much to just stay silent and do as everyone else does. And now I'm just like, no. Actually, and now I check in with myself and I say, wait, Melissa, okay, I got an invite to do this. Is this something I want to do? Or am I going to do this because I'm being supportive? Or am I doing this because it really makes me uncomfortable? Like, just really check in with myself, which is, I think, huge for me.
At the end of the day, I think this is an interesting point. One of my friends asked me recently, do I think that people have an obligation to explain themselves, or if they can't attend something? So if I invite you to something, do you have to explain to me
why you can't come? No? Right.
And I sort of said to her, I was like, no, they don't.
They don't, but it's almost like expected, right? Like, if somebody invites you somewhere and you say no, the next immediate question is like, okay, why? Do you have another commitment? Like, what is the deal? Is me wanting to stay in my bed that day is not enough excuse.
Right. And of course it depends on what it is. I mean, if I'm getting married and I invite my closest friends and my family and you just say, nope, I might wonder about that, and then so I think there's a time and place for it, but you're still not obligated to tell me why.
Right, and that makes people uncomfortable.
It does.
I remember just maybe a couple of months ago, for the first time, I told my family, like my family especially, my family they're the most spoiled ones, right? Because your family are the ones that you want to please the most. And I literally just got really headstrong, and I said, no, you know what? I'm doing what I want. So when I come around, be happy to have me. And when I don't come around, let it go, because I'm going to do what I want to do.
And how was that received?
Not well. She got really upset and feisty about it, and they've been talking really nasty. I mean, if they're listening, whatever. They've been talking really nasty about me because I want to do what I want to do. So it's like, I'm sorry, but not sorry. Like, this is how it's gonna be now moving forward. And I feel empowered by it.
Right.
Really, empowered, and I pray for them. I pray for people who are uncomfortable with people living their own lives. All of them.
Yeah, I think that what we need to be able to do, at least what I think people need to be able to do, is start to ask the questions. So why am I uncomfortable with that? Why does that hurt my feelings? And then to be able to say, if it's somebody where your feelings are hurt, to be able to say, to be able to verbalize, to say, hey, Melissa, it really hurt my feelings because here's why I would like to see you more. Here's why. And so is there something going on with you? Are you okay? Because it's just a need, like it's your own need, and you're not thinking about, okay, there might be something else that other person needs. So it's like just communicating and asking questions.
And family doesn't talk about feelings. I mean, I don't know about your family, but my family, how do you feel and what you like? No, we don't really talk about those things. We don't talk about feelings.
No, I feel like the only emotion that I feel acceptable expressing to my family is anger.
Oof.
I can say that I can call someone really easily and be like, I'm really angry, let me vent to you about this, and they will listen and they will participate. And it's great, but I didn't really know how to express anything else. Like, like I've been like severely depressed in the past. Like, how do you express that in where that's not something that was ever discussed or was ever made space for? It's like, oh, well, if you're feeling that way as a teenager, maybe you're just a moody hormonal teenager, or you're just really lazy because you don't want to get out of bed today, versus let's have a conversation about why you don't want to get out of bed today. Let's talk about how you're feeling. Like, can we verbalize your feelings?
Yeah.
I have an aunt and an uncle who I think they live in London, and I think they do this really well. At least from what I've seen, they have two small children, and there was one interaction that has really stuck with me. And her, I think a 3-year-old at the time, he hit his brother, his older brother, and 3-year-olds do this, and it's normal. But I literally heard my aunt say, "It's okay to be angry, but it's not okay to hit someone. Like, you gotta say why you're angry." And I was blown away. And this is me as a 30-plus-year-old person,
Like, you telling
blown away. Like,
this?
it's okay to be angry, and it's okay to verbalize that. Like, what?
Like,
It's
no,
like
I know
blew
one
my
told
mind.
me that.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
that actually hit me more than it hit the 3-year-old.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a good one. Yeah. And the fact that anger is like the one that we're most comfortable with just confirms that it's like negative, like it's something negative that is being fed to lead us to say that this is the only thing that's acceptable.
Yeah.
Negativity is the only thing that's acceptable. Oof, I didn't even know that was going over there.
Negativity, but negativity about other people. And I think that's a differentiating factor.
Right, because if you talk to them about your anger towards them, they might not be open to listening to
right.
that. Yeah.
Or your negative feelings about yourself. It's also not necessarily
really acceptable. Let's talk about like something outside of us.
Exactly.
Like, yeah, talk about everything else except what it really is. Oof. So how will you change the pattern in your lineage? I know you're prepping for motherhood, and you're about to go, you're in your 30s, and you're now planning your own life and creating your own life and your own family. So how are different things that you gonna choose to do differently, or at least one thing that you will be able to do differently to change that pattern?
Yeah, I use this word a lot with you, but I think what my husband and I have talked about is being intentional parents, being intentional human beings in general. So being able to be reflective, being able to have human-to-human conversations with our children. Now, we don't have children yet, so we don't know what it's going to be like. You don't know what cards you're going to be dealt. But at the same time, it's having those conversations. It's encouraging children to talk about their emotions and their feelings, and trying to really model for them what good looks like in the world. Like, how do you grow up to be a good citizen of the world? Because it's not just this house that you have to exist in. It's not just your school. It's the entire world. So how do we raise good citizens of the world?
Oof. And a lot of people, I always thought about that. Like, I always felt this intense pressure about motherhood because I always thought it that way. I'm a vehicle that's being used to bring human into the world, and this person doesn't belong to me. This is going to be a property of this world. And like, wow, the huge responsibility to have to like bring a great person into the world, and how am I gonna make them great, and oh my god, am I gonna mess up? Like, I beat myself up about it. And I don't think a lot of people, like, people just think, oh, I just want to have a pretty baby, or I want to have this baby with this person because I just want to be with them, or it's always, or I want to have something to love, or I want something to love me. Like, all these reasons why people choose motherhood these days is so confusing to me, because I'm scared half to death, because I'm thinking about being a vehicle to something and to someone that's going to contribute to this earth.
Yeah. And it is really scary, and we are going to mess up. And the key is to remain human, and to just remember that we are not perfect. We are dealing with all this other stuff. And so your question is I think the first step is, if you have, and everybody, even people with like the best parental relationships, everybody has something that they want to change going forward, or maybe that they should want to change going forward, or the cycle that they want to break. And so I think asking that question is the first step.
Yeah. And that's what that's the question I like to ask with all of my episodes and conversations, just because I think that you could apply that to anything in life, right? Like, how can that's what we're doing all of this for, is to change our lineage, to advance, to be better than the next. Like, that's the whole process of this. I remember my mom always saying that, well, my mom did this, so I want to do this differently with you. Like, that's what we all aspire to do, is to change and make better. Whether we succeed in it or not is the attempt that matters.
Right.
So my pattern that I am trying to break for my lineage is being vulnerable. I think I put a post earlier today for anyone who saw it. Well, by the time you listen to this, it's going to be several days. But I put a post in regards to a kid asking for their mom not to be perfect, but their mom to be happy, and that being more important. And it hit me really hard because I'm just like, it's so true. I was raised by a mother who not tried to be perfect, but motherhood was really high in importance for her. And she wanted to be like the best mom, and so she was always like too strong and never let us see her cry, and yet she was tolerating abuse in her household, and doing things that were to me very like vulnerable. But yet when it came to like what she told me, it was like never cry, and like don't be weak, and just be strong and be okay no matter what. And I think what I want to break that habit and that pattern, and be vulnerable, cry with my kids, tell my kids when I make a mistake and admit to it. And if I have to apologize, which is going to be hard, but I will apologize, and just be human with them, because I think it's vital and it's so important for the future to accept vulnerability.
Yeah.
So.
No, I totally agree with that. One of the things that struck me as being necessary to say, as you were talking about that, is the importance of modeling and modeling behaviors that you see. And so, as a parent, you want to model the best behaviors for your children, but what does best mean? Right. And so you have to really think about that. There's not, and it's a concept of it's not about what's right and wrong necessarily. I mean, there are some things that are right and wrong, but what does never crying in front of your children, but them seeing you tolerate abuse means?
Right.
Like, what does that mean?
And it's so confusing and misleading. Yeah. And you grew up confused. I mean, I certainly did.
Yeah.
And then you get to 30 plus, and you're trying to figure things out and rehash things, and trying to unbury your stuff and your lineage and stuff. It's a lot. It's a heavy burden to carry.
It's a lot.
So whatever I can do to take it on and release it and heal it and clear it, so that I don't have to refurbish and pass it along, would be ideal.
It's funny. I used to wonder, sort of, so getting way personal. My husband and I have been thinking about children for a number of years, but we haven't been able to have any as yet. And so there are times when I get really frustrated, because you walk down the street and there's like an 18-year-old who just popped out too, and you're like, okay, how does this happen? But one of the things that I'm really, really grateful for is that I've gotten to this place in my life where I can say, okay, I've had time to really figure myself out. 25, 26-year-old me would not have been able to say, okay, what are the cycles that you want to break with your children? And so if I had a child back then, who knows what I would be continuing. And so I think that work is really important. And it's not to say that every 25, or nobody should have children at 25. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying for me, I feel particularly blessed when I take a step back and think about it, because I've been able to do a lot of work on myself, and I continue to do a lot of work on myself. Every relationship that you have is modeled after relationships that you've either been in or you've observed.
Oof. Gosh, say that again?
Every relationship that you have is based on relationships that you have either observed or you have been in the past.
Whoa.
So, I mean, there's stuff that you might be like, I'm never doing that again, or I'm never doing the thing that I saw Auntie so-and-so do in her relationship. But that's the reality.
So we're just out here recycling, doing it for the AKA the earth, but really, we're recycling crap.
So, I mean, we might be. Some of us are. Some of us are not. There are some people who had great relationships in their lives, right?
Yeah, I forget that part. I forget that exists.
Yeah, but your idea of what a loving relationship looks like, until you are conscious, like making really conscious, intentional decisions, is really based on everything that you saw before.
Oof, gosh, that's good. That's so good. Oof. Well, I think we could wrap up with that. Wow. So everybody, please stick around for the after credits. Please don't forget they're like the best part about all of this. Um, Thank you, Stacy, for coming on and being transparent. I know you didn't want to be this personal, but you got personal, and I'm proud of you for it. And thank you, everyone, for listening. We have a lot more to come, and stay tuned.
Thanks, Melissa.
Remember, works behave.
And here are the after credits from my co host. We match energy.
Dear previous version of me, you have so much ahead of you, you have no idea where life is going to take you. Believe in yourself and let no one try to dim your light. Despite what the world tells you, you get to define what success means to you. You get to define your goals, and you also get to define how you want to go about meeting them. You might not meet all of them, you might not feel like you're on a path to anywhere, but you are. Just trust the process. You have a strong sense of right versus wrong, and that's awesome. It'll help you stay out of trouble. But remember not to judge yourself too harshly. It isn't productive, nor is it healthy, despite that being what you learned growing up. Learn to let go of the things and people that no longer serve you, and don't feel guilty about it. You'll be better off in the long run. And finally, above all else, don't forget to love yourself.